Hello, I'm Megan Lynn. I may or may not be your instructor. If I am, then great, we'll get to know each other better. If I'm not, you may have a different instructor who is using these same PowerPoints. It's all the same material, so let's get started. I am starting with the Reader's Handbook Chapter 1. So that's this book, Chapter 1. All right. Now, for my course, you will be doing the homework in this chapter at home. I want to just go over some of the key points for you so to make sure that you understand. And then when we meet in class next time, I'll expect you to have these exercises all finished, and we will briefly go over them to make sure that you understand the concepts. Okay, so Chapter 1. Chapter 1 covers the main idea of a passage. And I won't read every word to you. This PowerPoint will also be on D2L, so anytime you want to access it, you can do that at your will. But the most important task when you're reading something is to understand the main idea. Otherwise, it's sort of pointless. The main idea is the central message of a passage. It may be stated, which means it's written in the text, or it may be implied, which means the author doesn't directly state his or her meaning, but we need to sort of figure it out for ourselves. So stated means it's written in there, and implied means that we need to figure it out for ourselves based on what kind of examples they give us. When I ask you to read a passage and then tell me what is the main idea, I mean for you to write a whole sentence at least, could be 2 sentences or 3, a whole sentence at least that states the writer's position or focus on the topic. Okay, so when we do assignments, take quizzes, do critical reading assessments, when I'm asking you, tell me what the main idea of this passage is, you need to tell me more than just one word. You need to tell me a sentence or so about what is the writer's focus or position on the topic. All right, moving on. So the topic. One of the first steps to finding the main idea is determining what is the topic. A topic is the general subject that the passage explains. So it's going to be very broad, sort of like the topic is like an umbrella, and then all of the more specific things are under that umbrella. Topics are short, usually 1 to 3 words. So if, for example, we were reading an article about rainforests and it gave you all kinds of information about the animals that are in there and the trees that are in there and the plants that are in there, our topic would be simply rainforests, because that's like the big umbrella that encompasses all of those other more specific details. For the practices about topics, look at your Reader's Handbook, page 3, practice 1. The example here is, I'm going to show you on this document camera. We'll let the image adjust. Okay, so you can see that I have already circled the answers just to kind of get you going, but it says circle the phrase that could be the topic for each group below. So if we take this first group, it says, this first group, make a touchdown, play football, kick a field goal, block and tackle. The topic is play football because these other 3 parts fall under that idea or topic of football. Okay, number 2, it says wear a bathing suit, dive into the water, swim in a pool, complete 20 laps. Well, all of these 3 things have something to do with swimming in a pool. So swim in a pool is your topic. All right. I want you to complete the rest of those practices on your own. And if you need to pause this tape, of course, do so at any time. I'm going to keep moving on. Okay, next, Gotta change this. We are talking about details. Details develop, explain, and support the main idea. Details are all the facts, the reasons, the examples, the incidents, definitions, all of those things are details. So I would like you to look at your Reader's Handbook, page 10, practice number 4. Just going to show you briefly. Make sure you understand what's expected. Let's get it straight here. Okay, so practice 4 says, compare the items and indicate which is the topic with a T, the main idea with an M, and the supporting detail with a D. Okay, so if I read these sentences, which I'll do right now, Chinese officials hope to control floodwaters, generate electricity, and facilitate navigation by building a dam on China's longest river, the Yangtze. Sentence 2, new dam for the Yangtze. And sentence 3, the Three Gorges Dam, scheduled to be completed by 2009, is predicted to cost $24 billion. Okay, so I obviously have the answers marked, but when I'm trying to figure this out, I think, what is the most general, the most broad, and even what is the most shortest? Because that will, I'm sorry, the most short, because that will be our topic. Okay, so this one is the topic, number 2. New dam for the Yangtze. It's broad, and the other ones fall under it. So under the topic then will come the main idea, which is number 1, because it tells us a little bit about what's happening, but it doesn't tell us specific details. Okay, it just says officials hope to control the floodwaters, generate electricity, and facilitate navigation. Okay, then it gets more specific with the detail and tells us when it's to be completed and what the cost is. Okay, so there's our topic, our main idea, and our detail. The rest I want you to do on your own, please. All right, moving on. The next thing that we are going to talk about are strategies for finding the stated main idea. So remember, stated means it's something written in your book. So after reading a passage, you just need to ask yourself these questions. Who or what is this about? That will be the topic. What are the major details or key terms? And then 3, what main idea is the author trying to convey about the topic? Okay, so keep those in mind. Okay, now this will probably just confuse you, but I have to include it because it's the truth. Locations for main ideas. When an author writes a main idea in a passage or paragraph, honestly, it could be anywhere. It could be at the beginning, it could be at the end, the middle, the beginning and the end, or if it's implied, it could be just not stated at all. So, it may be a little bit confusing, but as we move on through this class, you'll start to figure it out. Okay, so when you're telling the main idea, it should be at least one complete sentence that is broad enough to include the significant details, focused enough to tell what the author's position is. All right, so again, when I ask you for my course, and probably for your if you don't have me for an instructor, if you have someone else, they're probably going to expect the same thing. When we ask you to tell us what the main idea is, we don't want just one word. We want at least a sentence or more explaining what the main idea is, and it should include those things. A few details, significant, which means important details, not the little tiny details. And then also, what does the author want us to know? What's the author's position? So let's look at, again, our Reader's Handbook. Page 14. Sometimes the document camera is just a little bit slower than we are. Okay, so page 14, practice 5. It says, apply the 3-question technique to identify the topic, major details, and the stated main idea of the following passage. Okay, so this passage reads, Dalmatians, now firehouse mascots, were once an important part of firefighting. Having no fear of horses, the dogs sped in front of the horse-driven carts, barking a warning to allow firefighters to get to a fire quickly. Dalmatians have historically been used for serious work because they have speed, endurance, intelligence, and excellent memories. These 4-legged fire station heroes have long been replaced by motorized trucks and blaring sirens. Sorry about my reading, but it was a little bit blurry on the screen for me. Okay, so who or what is the topic of this passage? And if you can't read my sloppy writing, Dalmatians at fire station. That's what I wrote. Dalmatians at the fire station, because that's the topic. That's the most general, broad idea that this passage is talking about. And then number 2 says, what are the key terms or major details? Underline them. And so you can see that I have that Dalmatians were an important part of firefighting, and they barked warnings to allow firefighters to get to a fire quickly. There are other major details. Otherwise I would be underlining everything. I didn't underline them all. There are other things. Maybe you underlined that Dalmatians have been used for serious work because they have speed, endurance, intelligence, excellent memories. All of those also are details. All right, and 3, it says, what main idea is the author trying to convey about the topic, and which sentence states it? So in this particular paragraph, the main idea is stated, and it's in the first sentence. It says, Dalmatians, now firehouse mascots, were once an important part of firefighting. And that is the main idea for that particular passage. Okay, I'd like you to complete the rest on your own. All right, so these are stated main ideas. Now let's talk about implied main ideas. And implied means suggested. So it means that the author didn't directly write the main idea in the passage. But you use the same 3 questions to figure out an implied main idea. Who or what is the passage about? That's the topic. What are the major details or key terms? And then what main idea is the author trying to convey about the topic? So it's your job to connect the details and focus the message. Let's look at page 18 in your Reader's Handbook. Practice number 6. It starts at the bottom of page 18. Okay, the passage says, passage 1, it says, Americans exchange around 1 billion colds per year, an average of 2 or 3 colds for every adult. Infectious cold germs can live for hours in the environment, so take precautions. To avoid contamination, wash your hands frequently to keep from transferring germs to your eyes, mouth, and nose. Drink more water. The winter air dries your nose and throat and allows viruses to attack. Relax and network with friends because a healthy mind strengthens the immune system. Okay, so they're asking us, over on the next page, they are asking us, who or what is the topic of this passage? So in case you didn't already know, we would have to figure it out by what the author was telling us. The author didn't say, this is how to avoid a cold. But they gave us some suggestions, and so that's the topic, how to avoid a cold. What are the key terms or major details? Underline them. And so I did that. Relax and network. Over here, drink more water. Wash your hands more frequently. There are more details, but I just need you to underline a few. Okay, and then the third one asks us, what main idea is the author trying to convey about the topic? Well, what that author wants us to know is there are several precautions people can take to avoid catching cold. That's the main idea. Okay, you don't have to tell me all those precautions when I ask you what the main idea is. Just give me just enough so I know what this passage is about. So in case you can't read my writing, again, there are several precautions people can take to avoid catching a cold. All right, I would like you to do the rest of those practices on your own. And let's talk about finding a main idea of a longer selection, because what we've been talking about for the first part of this chapter is finding the main idea for a paragraph. If you're reading like a whole paper, then you may find several main ideas, because usually each paragraph represents a longer selection. Each paragraph represents a new supporting detail. So you have to just fit all the pieces together under one central theme, and it helps me, anyway, to mark my book and make notes sometimes if I'm reading something long. So, think of it as a thesis statement. A thesis sentence narrows a topic to a central idea and then asserts the author's specific opinion about the topic. So, think of a main idea of a longer selection as a thesis statement. And let's look at page 23. Practice 7. I won't read you all of these passages because they are long and I'll be reading forever. But why don't you read it? You read it on your own. It's practice 7 here. Its title is The Fork. So you can see that there's passage 1. And then there's the first main idea. And then there's passage 2 and the second main idea. Passage 3 and the third main idea. Passage 4 and the fourth main idea. Okay, so each paragraph or passage will have its own main idea. So if I'm reading something that I need to use for work or for school and it's long, I make notes. So I can kind of keep it all together, and then I'll look over my notes and decide what is the whole thesis statement, what's the whole thing about. Okay, that is the end of the chapter, the end of the PowerPoint, and the end of this videotape. So I will look forward to seeing you in class. If I'm not your instructor, I'm sure your instructor's looking forward to seeing you in class.